Knoxville police officer Terry Flowers was investigating the robbery when Jerry pulled up.
He was just driving just real wild and went to yelling at me. I followed the bank robbers. Come and follow me. I'll show you where they're at. And I had to jump back in the car and chase him. He was just real convincing. So I just told him over the radio a subject was taking me to where the suspects were at.
Copy, Ray. Follow him. Don't know, Ray. He told me to follow him. Have all units be on the lookout for a white Volvo in this area. Female driving, 2 white males in it.
I got very nervous because they had moved the white Volvo out of the front of the house.
Is this it? Go the wreck right center and wait.
You know, I got to thinking, this might be the wrong house. You know, he might have just followed somebody that was making a withdrawal.
Hey, I think somebody looking out the window.
But she was real frantic. And I said, well, you know, something's wrong here. People, you know, if they see a couple cruisers in front, they might step out on the porch and say, what's going on, officer? You know, if nothing was going on.
Where's he at, Terry?
Officer Jim Marino, which we call Guido, arrived.
Okay, move on up, go.
A young officer, and I took him kind of under my wing.
Got it. Okay.
You're completely surrounded. You cannot escape. Come to the front door. Walk outside now.
I informed them that we were the police. They were completely surrounded. There was no means of escape. Told them to come out with their hands raised. No one would get hurt.
Open the front door. Walk outside. You're completely surrounded.
Officer Larry Gillen continued to talk to the suspects as an elderly woman living in an apartment behind the house was evacuated.
Front door. Walk outside with your hands raised.
Less than half an hour after they surrounded the house, a female suspect surrendered to police.
Come to the front door. Come outside and onto the porch now.
About 15 minutes later, the first man of the group came out. But out of 3 is not bad. Tried the same thing again, but no response with the third guy. He was the hard case.
An FBI team arrived and took up positions around the house, including Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Tom Locke.
One of the primary things we wanted to do was to find out as much intelligence information from the 2 who had surrendered about the third one who was still inside. Basically, there were 2 things. One, he was armed. He had several weapons. And secondly, both the suspects thought that this individual was of a mind that he was not going to come out.
Don't take the camera off my face, please. You told me your buddy's name. I don't know his name. I don't know his name. You made him do this.
We had determined that there was no telephone in the house. So that's when I pulled my car up and began talking to him through my loudspeaker.
This is Detective Tom Locke with the FBI. Attention in the house. Got you surrounded. Why don't you give yourself up? Throw out any weapons you have. Just come out with your hands up. I want to end this thing before anybody gets hurt.
The Knoxville Police Department SWAT team took over at the scene, with the FBI supporting and Agent John Denton negotiating.
What we try to do in this kind of situation is slow everything down. Get that person who's on the inside, whether they have hostages or not, to assess his situation in a realistic way.
This is John Denton of the FBI. I'm a negotiator. I want you to relax. Take it easy.
This is the problem with this incident. There's no phone in the house. With a bullhorn, you really can't tell with the dynamics whether the person is actually tuned into you. He's been through a bank robbery, so he's very high on anxiety. He's fired up. His adrenaline's pumping. He thought he was safe. Suddenly he realized he's surrounded by the police. He's got weapons in there. He's got a lot of bank robbery loot. 2 people, probably in his mind, and I'm second guessing here, have abandoned him. And there he is, stuck.
At this time, we could see the suspect move through the house. I asked the lieutenant permission to take him out if I see him come by the window again. He said, fire and defense only.
The SWAT team commander, Lieutenant Jim Kennedy, was in charge at the scene.
He was caught up, trapped, had no place to go, and it was his choice to either come out dead or alive.
One of the sharpshooters on the scene was Officer Gary Moyers.
We figured that a rational person would see the uselessness of the situation and come out. If not, we would deploy some gas and force him out into us.
As the standoff entered its third hour, tear gas rounds were launched into the house.
Normally, whenever a person is exposed to gas, it's a shock effect, you know. I give up, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen. And we deployed some more gas in an attempt to enhance the effects it was having on him. And he still refused to come out. When he started firing, he just took out all the glass, so he had a big hole, and he was getting fresh air in on him.
Guido yelled at me, Terry, I've been hit. Oh, he was just telling me, Terry, it burns, it burns. It was just real scary. I didn't know if he had his stomach blown away. Guido and I were real close, and it scared me real bad.
I crawled up alongside, pulled out the microphone, and said, I think we've all had enough of this. Why don't you throw out your gun? And almost immediately, a gun came out the window.
Very positive sign. Oh, he's still got 2 weapons. It's like a kid throwing a tantrum. Once the energy's dissipated, you've got, at least for the time being, someone you can deal with. Talked him out on the front porch. Had the weapon on his own chest. Give him the peace sign. So in effect, he's holding himself hostage for his own safety. If he came out of there in any other posture, with the emotions out there, with an officer being shot, and all the other gunfire that went on, cruisers being damaged, bullets, holes, and things, somebody on the perimeter might have shot him.
He told us that he was going to kill himself. He said, don't get excited. Don't be alarmed. He said, there's going to be one more shot. He said, that's all there is to it. He said, I'm going to end this. I'm going to take my own life. I'm going to kill myself. And we said, no, don't. We kept trying to get him to throw the gun out. And the FBI agent was there with me. I looked and I said, I can hit the gun. He says, what? I said, I can shoot the gun. It knocked it up away from his chest, and he turned and turned the pistol and looked at it and saw that it was damaged.
After 4 hours, the final suspect was taken into custody. He was later found guilty of bank robbery and attempted murder and sentenced to prison. The other male suspect was also sentenced to prison. The woman was cleared of all charges. Jerry Meredith has received numerous awards for his quick thinking in spotting the bank robbers that day.
Had he not followed them and observed the car switching and then taken us to that location, we probably would have caught them.
Because he'd been wearing a bulletproof vest, Officer Richard Giamarino recovered quickly from the gunshot.
The vest absorbs the energy of the bullet, but the bullet is moving at such a fast rate that it actually burns you. It's like being hit with a baseball bat or or a hot poker.
Guido's living proof of wearing the body armor, and a lot of officers that normally left that vest hanging in their locker now put it on.
Next.
I don't know, it's spurting out.
The possibility that she would die in